We're all set.
All right, well, thank you for that nice introduction, Allison, and it's great to be here. I love helping to support Ann's Place, and that's why I've been a volunteer for many years. Cancer has touched my family's life in many ways, from my mother to my sister to my ex-husband, other significant people in my life. And I personally have gotten over an illness back in my early 30s, not cancer, but it was chronic fatigue syndrome. So I know how difficult it is to have a disease that debilitates and can really affect your life in so many ways. And the good news is that there are a lot of things that you can do to live your best and have your healthiest, best life. And that's what I really like talking about. No matter what the diagnosis, there are always things that can be done. So it's great that you're here today. It's great that you are taking control of your own health. And, I am here to support you through that. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, and we will start our presentation. All right, so I hope you guys can see that okay. And I'm going to jump right in. Those of you who submitted questions, a lot of what you asked is already in this presentation, but we will definitely have time for Q&A later. And the chats do flash, so if a question flashes in, I'll look at it too while I'm presenting. If it relates to anything I'm presenting, I'll try to address you. It's really hard with these Zooms. You want to make these presentations as interactive as possible, but unfortunately with this format, we really can't do it till the end. But your questions really are very important to me. When I've done these nutritional workshops before at Ann's Place, it was really lovely. And we were sitting upstairs and having a nice meal because it was like a lunch and learn, and we were supporting each other. And hopefully someday we can do that again. But for now, this is what we have. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this cancer prevention diet. And, it's called the cancer prevention diet, but it applies to people that do have cancer. But I do want to say up front, everybody's situation is individual. So if you can't eat certain things because of your estrogen positive cancer, like soy as an example, then you would ignore, if I have it up here on the screen. So what I'm trying to say is what's good for one may not be good for everyone, but we'll try to make that interactive. And if you have specific questions, we'll try to get to them later. One of the questions, which I think is good to start off with, is there was a question: does diet matter? If I have a cancer diagnosis, my doctor says that diet really doesn't matter. I should eat what I want and just focus on a healthy lifestyle. So that's really a great question to kick this off with. And in general, we do all need to eat as healthy as possible. I always say follow the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of the time you should eat healthy and balanced, and think about your health as your priority. And maybe 20% of the time you could focus more on eating the foods you enjoy, celebratory foods. We'll talk about that relation to cancer in a little bit. But we don't want to be so stuck that we don't enjoy our life, because food is an important part of our lives. So I wanted to just say that off the top here. But there are some studies, and this top of this talk here talks about that the American Institute for Cancer Research has reviewed more than 4,500 studies on food and cancer. And so a lot of what I'm sharing does come from those recommendations. So I would say these are general recommendations for everybody. And so the first thing, it doesn't mean that this is necessarily the most important thing, because vegetables actually are the most important thing. So it's not in order of most important, but legumes such as beans, lentils, garbanzos, kidney beans, etc. Those are high fiber foods. So we want to include some of them in our diet. Meat, in terms of chicken and turkey, eggs, These are things that can be part of a healthy, balanced diet for most people, but I have in parens eliminate if going plant-based. And I have taught many, many, many people how to have a healthy plant-based lifestyle and a flexitarian lifestyle. So I'm going to talk about that separately. But for many of you, you probably will want to get most of your nutrients and most of your diet as plant-based. And that's what I do. I feel that it's very important for most people to eat that way. And then fish is important. You know, it is a good protein source. Obviously, if you're plant-based, if you're vegetarian or vegan, you're not going to have fish. But for many people, they can include fish in a healthy, balanced diet. And we recommend wild fish because they don't have the chemicals that the other fish have. And the ones that are highlighted here, such as wild salmon and sardines are good examples. They are also high in omega-3s, and you'll hear more about that, but that's also very important for your health. And tomato products are important. I think we have 1 or 2 men here, and it's particularly important for prostate health, but it's important really for women as well. So if you do like tomatoes, enjoy them. One of the best parts of the spring and the summer is the abundance of homegrown vegetables. When I had my own garden, now I'm renting, but when I had a home for many years, I had all kinds of tomato plants, all kinds of kale and lettuces. And it's so great to be able to grow your own foods and have no processing and no chemicals on your food. Another part of a healthy, balanced diet is some degree of whole grains. Again, they do have fiber. And the ones that I have highlighted here are the ones that are gluten-free. I'm not suggesting that everybody be gluten-free. Actually, barley has gluten, but brown rice, quinoa, buckwheat, oats could be gluten-free. Most of these that I have here are gluten-free, but you know, I recommend gluten-free based on other conditions that people have, not necessarily because they have cancer. And so I know another question was by somebody said that I have multiple things. I have cancer and I have other medical history or medical issues. So how do I balance that? And I think, you know, it is helpful to work with a practitioner if you do have a lot of different conditions, because that is really when you want to balance out some of these things and prioritize, you know, should I be gluten-free? Shouldn't I be gluten-free? And we could talk more about that in the Q&A section. But very important is this next bullet here, to eat at least 10, I mean, do your best on this. I know it's hard for some of you, but at least 10 servings of a wide variety of fruits and vegetables every day. And this isn't just what I recommend for people with a cancer diagnosis. This is for really good health and prevention of all diseases. We know the benefits of the plants. We know how much nutrients we get from the plants in terms of antioxidants and wonderful fiber. And so the thing to share, if the number 10 is overwhelming to you, the serving sizes are much smaller than you think. A half a cup of fruit or a whole small fruit, as an example, is a serving, or a half a cup of vegetables is a serving. And if you have, like I recommend to a lot of my clients to have a smoothie, you know, a protein smoothie, and we throw vegetables in there. I had one this morning. I had my kale in there. I have strawberries and blueberries in there. So I'm getting probably 3 servings of my 10 right then and there. For lunch, if you're having a big salad and you're throwing extra vegetables on top, or even cutting in, you know, a little sweet potato on it, avocado, all of those things count. And so, you know, if you had that, maybe you're at a 7 already. You know, if you start out with a smoothie, then you have a big salad, then you have a couple of vegetables with dinner and some fruit for dessert. So I just want to share that so you realize that the 10 servings, it's not as much as it sounds. Citrus is important because of the high vitamin C content, and vitamin C has been used for fighting cancer for years. I'm sure some of you have read some of the early analysis on that. And other things that are important, such as red grapes and berries, these things have specific nutrients in them. The grapes, the skin of the grapes are high in resveratrol, which is one of the things that I sometimes recommend to some of my clients. I'm sure you've heard red wine is good, but alcohol unfortunately isn't good for cancer, so the red grapes are good. As well as berries are a power food for people with cancer for all of the antioxidants. They're very high fiber as well. So when you think of vegetables, we want you to think of colors. The carotenoids give the vegetables their color and powerful antioxidants. And I do have a chart a little later for reference that shows you by color which fruits and vegetables to eat to get different antioxidants that fight different types of cancers. So I think it's just a nice reference material to look at. But eat as many as you can, as often as you can. And the ratio should be at least 2/3 vegetables, 1/3 fruit, because fruits are high in sugar. And sugar is something that's not necessarily good for cancer. But fruit has so much extra stuff in it. It has the fibers in it, so that it's not like having a spoon of sugar on top of your cereal. You're getting a lot of nutrients in it that you need. And now let's talk about the green leafy vegetables, spinach, kale, romaine, all those things that are so good. They have a lot of extra antioxidants. So we have the orange and the yellows, we have the greens, and that's why we tell you to eat the rainbow, so that you get the variety. And then we talk about some of these other ones, carrots, cantaloupes. So they're all good for you. Try to vary them, try to get them across your menu for a day. And if you can't do that, certainly in a week. The cruciferous vegetables are also very important. If you have a thyroid condition, possibly that you would eat less of those. I'm just bringing that up because somebody had asked about multiple conditions. Some people feel that the cruciferous vegetables slow down the thyroid function. So we say that that's something that, again, you should talk to somebody about if they're helping you with a diet. That's why we want to know everything that's going on in your life, all your health history. When I work with somebody, it's across the lines of everything. And for everyone else, though, these foods are very important. They have certain nutrients, phytochemicals in them, but they also have specific things in them, indole 3-carbinol, that pulls out cancer cells. So that's why they're particularly important for people with cancer. And they taste really good. And if you have questions on preparing foods later on, if we have time, I love cooking. It's a very big part of my life, and sharing food with family and friends. I know you're gonna, well, we had thought you would have an in-person, but we're not sure, but you are gonna get a cooking demo later on in the series. So I think you'll really enjoy that as well. Let's see where we are. And then, drinking tea. So green tea has the most anti-cancer nutrients, but black tea is also good for the brain and has other catechins and stuff that's important for the immune system. So tea is better than coffee. Green tea is the best if you do have a cancer diagnosis, and you can have all kinds of flavored green teas. There are many on the market now. So hopefully you enjoy that. Other things to consider adding in your diet are flaxseed, especially for female hormone cancers and even male hormone cancers. We say that 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed is very helpful and can be added to a shake. It could be put on a salad. You can cook with it. Sometimes if I make salmon burgers, I use ground flaxseed in that. So you can do a lot with that. It's an excellent source of essential fatty acids. Mushrooms are also very important. They've been studied, medicinal mushrooms for cancer fighting. And so I know some of you have questions about supplements. I'm not going to talk that much about supplements. This is mostly about food today, but consider using all of the variety of mushrooms available to you in your cooking. But there are some mushroom supplements as well if you don't like cooking with mushrooms. And then I'll just say here, in terms of limits, coffee, no more than 2 cups per day. Alcohol, I mean, I'm sure you've heard there's a recent study that it used to be, I'll just say, that alcohol was never recommended for cancer, but it was recommended for heart disease. And now a very new study in the last 3 or 4 months said it's really not healthy for anybody to consume alcohol. So again, it's one of those things. I would go with the 80-20 rule. If you're at a party, if you are celebrating your birthday, if you feel like you absolutely need a glass of wine every once in a while, is it going to, destroy your health? I would say no. But you follow what you're doing, you follow what your doctor recommends. I'm here to give you, just general guidelines of what I recommend when I work with my clients, when I understand their full history. Okay. Maintaining a low sodium diet. Yes, that's important, not just for cancer, but for other health issues potentially. Reducing total fat intake. So there are some questions about fat that came up, and ketogenic diets, which is a high fat diet. And I will just say in general, there's no one type of diet that is right for everyone. And each person has their own metabolic profile and their own hereditary factors, as well as your medical factors. And so, and even blood type for some people comes into play when they're looking at what kind of diet, should I be more plant-based, or should I have some animal protein in my diet? So these are things that are somewhat individualized. But in general, I'll just say this in general, for most people, a balanced diet is about 40% carbs, 30% fat, and 30% protein. But let me say off the bat that the majority of the carbs we're talking about are vegetables and fruits, and then some healthy whole grains that are high in fiber. So it's all the high fiber, good, healthy carbs, not the junky foods, the processed foods, the sugar-laden foods, the foods that may be from your childhood that make you happy, but in your body, it really isn't good for you. And I know you know which foods I'm talking about. And the fats, for your 30% of fat, should come from the healthy fats like avocados and nuts and nut butters and olive oil. So that's what you should bear in mind when you're thinking about macronutrients and the ratio and all of that. Saturated fat should be relatively low, and that's what the fats that are in meat and in cheese and things like that. And then this talks about reducing or eliminating non-fruit sugars. And sugar was a question that was asked. Why is sugar bad, or how is sugar so bad? I know that they were hoping for a better answer. I'm sorry. But sugar is a big immune system depleter. And even if you didn't have cancer, but you were just concerned about COVID, or if you were concerned about any other, issue around immune system or autoimmune, I would tell you the same thing. Consume sugar in moderation. We call sugar the anti-nutrient because it depletes vitamins and minerals that are important for the immune system. Particularly the B vitamins get depleted with sugar, antioxidants, iron, and zinc. So all of these things are very important for your overall health. And the B vitamins also get burned up when you're under a lot of stress. So a normal pattern for somebody would be get stressed, eat sugar. So if you do that, you are really depleting your B vitamins, and that creates a bad cycle. So hopefully you have, Ann's Place is amazing. You have learned from some people over there other ways of dealing with stress so that you don't stress eat. And as somebody who teaches mindfulness, if we do have time at the end, I'm not sure we will, maybe we could do a little breathing exercise. So I know that, you know, sugar is a craving, and but I have to say, because I lead programs where we do rejuvenation and a little cleansing, and we reduce all of the things that cause cravings. And when people follow a program like that, they don't have cravings anymore. So it's definitely possible to get rid of your cravings. So I hope I answered that person's question. All right, so continuing on, I know there was also a question about grilling, and I already had that in the presentation here. So charred, broiled, or grilled meats, it says eliminate. So why? Very high heats can turn the meat into a place where it develops chemicals that are unhealthy. And so the best way around it, if you do enjoy some occasional grilling, is to marinate it in something with vitamin C. So that actually allows you to do this grilling. So if I was going to grill chicken, you know, I don't do that very often, but if I was, I would marinate it in like a lemon juice sauce or an orange juice sauce or something like that, so that penetrates the chicken and it protects it from the carcinogenic effect. So I hope that answered that person's question. And they asked a follow-up question about vegetables. Vegetables don't have the same direct effect as meat does, but it's still not great to really char the vegetables. And it would help to use like a, I haven't grilled in so long, I'm forgetting what it's called, but you guys know, that you continue to just kind of put the oil on it, you know, to just keep it moist is all I'm going to say. So I usually spray with olive oil spray and then just kind of keep it moist if it's vegetables. Okay. Other than that, food preservatives, additives, artificial flavors, dyes, these are something that we don't want in our foods. We don't want them in our vitamins. We don't want them in our beverages. Somebody did send me a link to a few foods, and I did actually see quite a few food preservatives and things that weren't healthy in a couple of the brands that were sent to me. There was one chicken one that I looked up, and it did have in it a couple of preservatives. It had, I believe, was it that one that had trans fats in it? I wrote it down. I can't remember. Anyway, it had a few things that weren't healthy and balanced. And one of the, I think the carb tortillas that somebody sent me had trans fats in it. So you do have to read all your labels. And in general, it's best to eat the food in its natural form. I know that sometimes for convenience, you know, hey, you know, you got Trader Joe's right there if you go to Ann's place, right? And, you know, they have really good prepared foods. And I know sometimes you want to just pop something in the microwave, or you want to eat something that isn't prepared fresh. And I'd say once in a while, that's fine. One of the things that I really wanted to do when I did my on-site workshop is to teach people how to use just a few ingredients to cook really healthy meals at home, you know, from natural start. So, you know, we always say you shop the outer aisles of the supermarket because that's where the fresh, unprocessed foods are. So it's your produce and it's your fresh, you know, if you are going to have chicken or fish or whatever, it's those foods. It's not the canned foods. It's not the foods in the package or the frozen foods, because they have to have preservatives, you know, because they last, their shelf life is just different. So if you are going to use one of those, you want it to have the very shortest amount of ingredients as possible, because when you start getting 2 paragraphs, you know it's going to have a lot of unhealthy things in it. All right, I already talked about that. Nitrates are things, I don't think anyone thinks a hot dog is healthy, so you probably avoid those. All right, other things, healthful hints. So Overeating is something that none of us should do, regardless of cancer or no cancer. It's good to have as close to normal BMI as possible for disease prevention in general. Eating fewer calories per day may be a helpful strategy for some people. I'm sure some of you have heard about interim fasting as a strategy. I'm not going to go into details unless there's a question about it later, but there are different programs that are designed to help reduce calories on certain days, because there's been studies on this, and the studies show that you do get some level of longevity if you eat less calories, fewer calories a day. But that, again, goes back to what I said in the beginning. Do we eat to live? Do we live to eat? And it's really not fun to, always be on a program. So I think we have to balance that and enjoy our lives, but also be as healthy as we possibly can. We talked a little bit about stress, the immune system, very important to practice relaxation exercises. We'll talk more about that at the end. Participating in regular physical activity. I don't think anyone here would smoke. Maintaining normal body weight. And I have the interim fasting here again. 16-8 is a strategy, and that strategy would mean you don't eat for 16 hours and you eat for 8 hours. So for many people, what that looks like is that they stop at like 6 o'clock and they don't eat again till 10 o'clock. So I think that is 16 hours, yes. Check my math. Okay. So I've included this. I'm not going to go over this, but this is really a reference for you because there was the question on sugars. There's a lot of things that are sugar that we don't know. I think everyone kind of knows that the first grouping here are sugars. The next hidden sugars, maybe it says toxic sugars. A lot of these are what we would say are disguised sugars. They aren't listed as sugar, so some people don't know that they are sugar. High fructose corn syrup was an ingredient in, I think that was the chicken thing that the person sent me. So be careful, read your labels and avoid the oses because the oses are sugars. And also avoid common additives in food. I think many of you recognize a lot of these. And one thing though that the food environment gets away with is they can have something that doesn't say MSG, but it could be in any of these things. And a lot of times we do see some of these things on the labels, like yeast extract was in either the cracker thing that the person sent me, or it was in the chicken thing that they sent me. So we don't know if that's a hidden name for MSG or not, but MSG is a chemical that supposedly was banned years ago, but it creeps back in under other names. So these will be part of your reference package, so no worries. All right, we're going to switch topics a little bit now and talk about plant-based, which is something that I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about it because I think it's the best diet. So even if you're not 100% plant-based, if most of your diet is plant-based, you are going to have much better health overall. And so, what it means really is to eat mostly fruits and vegetables because of all the things we talked about before, the fiber, the enzymes, the vitamins and minerals, phytochemicals. There's research showing that eating more plants and fewer animal products can even reverse some chronic ailments, some issues. And I've worked with people and they have gotten rid of things like arthritic conditions and joint pains and all kinds of other things that they didn't recognize was from a lot of the foods that they were eating. And so when I do this 30-day rejuvenation program with people, we do somewhat of an elimination diet. And then we add foods back in. And when they add foods back in, they can really see the impact. Like all of a sudden they have more allergies, or their headaches are back, or they're not sleeping as well. Again, their joints arthritis is back. So eating things every day, it's very hard to know that things are affecting you, but we know that plant-based is good for you. That much we do know. And it helps the environment too. Tomorrow is Earth Day, the official Earth Day, and it really is great to have lower footprint. And when you're eating more plants and less animals, it affects the environment in a positive way. All right, unfortunately, you couldn't see my beautiful color picture of this bowl, but I will tell you, it has chickpeas, it has avocado in there, it has lots of vegetables and some nuts and seeds sprinkled on it. So a lot of people think if they eat plants, they're not going to be full. And I would say men believe this more than women. I don't want to make fun of men here, but when I have men do my rejuvenation program, they're like, look at that. And they're like, what? I have to give up my, my steak, or I have to give up my chicken. So first, let me just say that if you're a woman and you're responsible for the household food, meaning your husband potentially, or children potentially, what I hope to teach is that the bulk of everyone's diet is plant-based. Sometimes some people need the piece of chicken to go with it. Or if it's children, they need extra protein for growing. Not all of them. Some of them do very well in a vegetarian mode. They eat eggs and stuff, but just not meat or fish. Or if you have a husband, and when I taught this class at Ann's place, this was a concern of quite a few of the people, because it was a support group also. This was a concern that, how do I feed my family? So that's why I'm bringing this up. And some of these women had cancer, and they were young, and they had children, and they had husbands that didn't want to eat plant-based. And, we spent a lot of time talking about managing that. So anyway, it's something to consider for the whole family, but then making adjustments. So it means getting most or all of your calories from fresh, whole plant foods that are minimally processed or not processed at all. So a diet of mostly plants, and it could be vegetarian or vegan, but it's not necessary. And because there are junk food vegans, and that's not healthy. So you can call yourself a vegan because you don't eat meat or dairy or eggs, but then you could eat processed plant foods, and all the chemicals that I said were bad. So that would be a very unhealthy diet to follow. So the quote from Michael Pollan is, if it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. And I really like that quote. And that's just something that I think we can easily remember and keep in mind. So here's all the things that you can eat: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices. And you can make very hearty meals with this. On my rejuvenation program, we give you all these recipes, and one example of it is a sweet potato hash that we make for breakfast. And that is absolutely yummy. It has sweet potatoes in it. It has a little healthy fat in it. It has, peppers and onions and mushrooms, and it is very hearty and delicious. All right. And the only other thing here, I'm really not going to mention too much about supplements, except answer the question that was asked me later if we have time, is if you do choose to eat more vegan, vegetarian, then there are some gaps that maybe some vitamins are necessary, such as B12. D, everybody needs anyway, whether they're going vegetarian, vegan or not. Omega-3, I think everyone needs anyway, but more so if you're not eating fish in your diet. But you can get omega-3s from flax, you can get it from walnuts, or two other sources. And zinc tends to be in meats and stuff. So if you're not eating those, you may need extra of that. Now this I'm definitely not going through, but this is one of the things I said I was going to provide for reference for you. And it has the foods by color, the great red foods, and then on the side it has the benefits of those foods, you know, reds, oranges, yellow, greens, blues, purples, blacks, and white, tan, and brown. All right, so let's talk about flexitarian. You may or might not know what it is. So flexitarian means eating mostly plant, but also being flexible. So that means if you're on vacation and you know, they're serving fish, you eat fish because you're there, and they're serving fresh fish and you want to eat it. And or you're mostly plant-based, but you're feeling like you need a little extra protein. So you have fish or you have a piece of chicken, you know, when you feel you need it, but you don't necessarily have it every week. These are some examples of flexitarian. It really means that you are flexible and not rigid in your diet. And isn't that great to be flexible and not rigid in your diet, but still eating healthy? Not if you agree. I think that's really important. But we like to start with plants. So we start with vegetables, fruits, beans, nuts. This says soy foods. You know, I'll just mention this right out off the bat because this part of the presentation, I've presented to other people that don't have cancer as a concern. But I'll just say that there's an on again, off again with soy and cancer, and I'm sure you probably know that. So for years it was great, then it was terrible. Now the latest studies have shown that some women with breast cancer in the past, there have been studies that show those who've had some healthy soy, non-GMO, soy non-processed, which is the only soy I would recommend, did actually better than the control group in terms of recurrence. So you have to decide based on your own diagnosis and talking with your doctors if soy is allowed. But there still are other things that you can eat, of course, other beans and nuts and all these other things. And then it says add optional dairy. So step 1 would be considered vegan. Step 2, adding optional dairy would be you know, vegetarian. If you did decide to add a serving of dairy, could be yogurt. That's usually the one I would recommend if you want to do that. And then step 3 would be adding optional seafood, poultry, or eggs. And then step 4 would be occasionally trading the seafood, poultry, or eggs for, you know, meat. And that's something that, again, is very personalized. If it was going to be meat, it should definitely be grass-fed beef if you did want to have that every once in a while. So that's kind of the way that goes. And then this is an example of a breakfast bowl. The first one that we see here is oatmeal with fruit and nuts. So that's pretty healthy. Sometimes I put plant-based protein powder in my oatmeal because that gives me more protein and I need that in the morning as well. And that is again, a plant-based product that is non-GMO that I've been using. So if you were to do this without any yogurt or without any milk, it would definitely be vegan. If you wanted to add a little non-plant-based milk, then it would still be vegetarian. Then we come to lunch, and this example is a really nice lentil soup, and it is a salad with fruit and nuts. Again, very hearty, very filling, and this is all plant-based. And then for dinner, this is the veggie bowl that I mentioned before. It has chickpeas and avocado, but if you found that you needed more, you could add a small serving of fish or poultry. And again, that would be very healthy. And then if you're still hungry, you know, fill up with fruits, vegetables, nuts, whole grain crackers, as an example, as snacks. All right, so you may have more questions about that, and I can answer them during the open Q&A part. This next piece here is special cancer fighting foods. And again, this is mostly for your reference. It says what the food is, and then it says why. I'm not going to go over this in detail here. Some of these we've covered, like mushrooms, dark green leafy vegetables, legumes, grapes we talked about, walnuts a little bit for omega-3. Garlic is just a great immune booster in general. Okay, berries we discussed. Turmeric is a very important spice, and a lot of my clients use it. And a lot of them also use the supplement as well, because it's hard to get as much medicinal from the diet, but it's certainly a good thing to add on to foods as much as possible. We talked about cruciferous vegetables, and celery is also good. All right, so you have that as a handout. And now I'm just going to switch gears a little bit and talk about mindful eating. So eating is a process. And again, I want you to think of eating in multiple ways. Yes, it's fuel. That is very important for your body. It also has all the goodness for your health that we talked about. But it's also important to honor the food that you're eating and take time to be mindful about what you're eating and how you're eating it. So if you are eating like that beautiful bowl that I mentioned, but you're eating it so fast that you're not putting your fork down, and you're not even, let's say you're watching TV while you're eating it, that would not really be a productive way of eating this healthy food. So we want you to be as mindful as possible while you're eating, and that actually helps the absorption of your nutrients. It helps you, your whole digestive process, because I know some people have compromised digestive systems as a result of chemo and radiation and other things. So it really is important from a health perspective, but it's also important from an emotional perspective to enjoy your food. And when we rush a meal, we don't enjoy our food. And I always give the example, because I've done a lot of work with the employees at Northern Westchester Hospital for many years. And one of my, at the time, she was one of the heads of the hospital. And I taught my mindful eating class. And then she actually admitted to everyone who was there that one day she usually would have like yogurt and a few other things for lunch, and that she was really hungry, and she's like, you know, I don't know what happened to my lunch. I'll go to the car and get it. And she went to the car, it wasn't there. She came back, looked in her garbage pail, and she actually had her yogurt thing in the garbage pail, and she ate it so fast and was so busy doing other things that she forgot that she even ate it. So that's like the antithesis of mindful eating so fast you really don't even know you're eating it, you're not enjoying it. So if you have the luxury, if you're retired, if you have the luxury of eating slowly, I recommend that you eat when you eat. You don't do other things. You chew slowly, you put your fork down, you have small portions on smaller plates, you pay attention to your sense of fullness. You imagine the nutrients getting into your body and how wonderful it is to be getting all this nourishment from these beautiful plants with their beautiful colors. Pay attention to your sense of fullness, savor the flavors, textures, aromas, have good conversation. If you are talking, you know, to other people and you're not alone, and eat for hunger, not boredom or anxiety. So what you really want to do is recognize and redirect non-hunger eating to other behaviors. And you may want to have a list of those other behaviors if you really know that you are just having a craving. It's very normal, but instead of grabbing something that's not good for you, have some redirect behaviors. One of my clients years ago, she would actually chew a piece of gum. You know, that was her saving grace. And then, you know, she got the anxiety out that way, and instead of food, she turned to that. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. And maybe some other time I'll talk more about that. So I'm not going to go into detail on this because I want to have time for your questions, but nutrition is really what we talked about today. And we talked about all the things in that little spot there on your screen, antioxidants, diversity of diet rainbow, choose the rainbow, adequate fiber, remove the offenders, processed foods and sugars. But these other parts are also extremely important: managing stress, sleeping well, having regular exercise, and connection with others. And that's one of the great things about Anne's Place. It is connection with others who are going through what you're going through. And they have amazing support, amazing people like Allison that will work with you and help you. And you are at the right place for that. So I do want to just say that. And then I think the last part I have, and then we'll go to the questions part, is, people always say, how do I get started? How do I go from where I am to where I want to be, completely change my diet? Hopefully it won't be such a complete change for many of you, but really take it step by step. I basically talked about a lot of things. And does that mean you have to embrace everything I said and do it tomorrow? Absolutely not. You can pick one thing and start with that. And when you feel you've done well with that, you can pick another thing. So choose out of what I've said, one or two things to get started with. And that's really going to help you a lot. And then keep adding on. If you feel you need more support, one of the questions was about picking a nutritionist, working with a nutritionist. Obviously, there are many people you can go to, and I'm just one example of somebody who could be there to support you if you do need extra help. And I do individual counseling and coaching virtually, and in some in person. I do virtual group-based programs, and I do have this 30-day plant-based rejuvenation program if you do feel like you are called to eating more plant-based and want to do something like that with a group. It really is a great program. I did mention to Allison too that for anyone who has a more personal question that they didn't ask and they want to ask me privately, feel free to contact me. I will give you a 15-minute free consultation, and you can ask me your personal question if you have it. And also, if you want to learn more about what it would be like to work with a nutritionist like me, I'm happy to answer your questions about that too. And some people who did ask about supplements, I do have a free nutrition assessment that you can take if you ever wanted to do it. And it does give information about supplements, and you can compare it to what you're currently doing, because I'm not going to really get a chance to go into detail on that. And I know several people had questions about specific supplements. So that's all I have to say to the group right now. And we will have time for your questions. We're almost just about at the half-hour mark. So that went really as planned, Allison. And I'm going to stop my share.